and Tuppence. I've got the mushroom mould out again because I have so many more ideas for this mould. It really is versatile. I've already made a toadstool bug house and a sunflower bee drinking dish. For this video, I'm going to make 3 different projects. I'm going to use the stalk to make a pot. I need to create a lid so that this looks like a cactus. And this part I'm going to turn into 2 dishes, a kiwi fruit and a lily pad. So let me start the mushroom makeover. I'm using Aqua Cast Eco resin for this project. I've got 532 grams of powder and 188 of water, and I'm mixing that until it's nice and smooth and there are no more lumps. I'm going to divide this between both of the moulds and fill them up. Then I'll gently tap the moulds to release the bubbles, especially around this cap. The mould curls over and the bubbles get trapped underneath. Once I have both of the moulds full, I'm going to set these aside. They'll take about 2 hours to completely set and cool down before I can demould them. And then they're going to need 24 hours to dry before I can move on to the next step. Now that I have my base, I want to turn this into a lidded cactus pot by creating a domed lid on the top. And to do that, I had to create a platform to build my lid on. I used my laser to cut some circles. This one is going to fit on the inside. That should hold the lid on. And this larger circle will fit to cover the top. And I can build the dome on top of that. But first I need to stick everything together. So this ring needs to go in the centre. I've already put a score line there so that I know how to line this up. I'm using bookbinding glue to join these together. You could use wood glue, but this is a really great all-purpose glue. I'm going to twist this ring a little bit. That's going to spread the glue out underneath it and make sure that I get a really good bond. But it's important that I keep it lined up in the middle, otherwise everything will be off centre when I put the lid on. Okay, that glue has set enough. I can fit this in place. Now if I put that on, you can see I've still got a little bit of wiggle room. Now I can glue these pieces on the top and make sure they're centred. The reason I've made these is to help pad out the top of the dome. I'm going to be using some foam clay, and the thicker that you use the foam clay, the longer it's going to take for it to dry. So if I pad this out with wood and give it a little bit of support, I'll be able to use a thinner layer of clay to create the dome, and it will dry so much quicker. Just want to add these 2 circles in the middle, and that's going to give me a height to work to. Okay, I just need to leave these to set in place before I can move on to the next step and build that dome. Right, the glue's all set, so I've got my framework to build the dome on top of. Before I add the clay though, I'm going to fill this out a little bit more using this paper packing tape. It's a sticky tape. So I'm just going to fold it over so that the sticky is on the outside, twist it together, and I can use this to fill in some of those gaps. And because the sticky is on the outside, I can stick it down onto the wood, and also the clay will stick to it a little easier. Right, so I just keep making twists and filling this out. Not too bad. I think 1 more will do. Again, twist it so that the sticky is on the outside, and then fill this in. Much better. I'm just going to press that down. I've already got a rough shape of a dome, so now all I have to do is cover that with the foam clay. Now I'm going to take pieces of the air dry foam clay and I'm going to smooth that in place on top of the lid, creating the dome. I'm pressing each piece down firmly, making sure that it is well joined and that there isn't air pockets underneath. The clay will stick to itself really well, just need to make sure that I smooth over the join. Once I have the whole thing covered, I am using the palm of my hand to help smooth everything out and create that domed shape that I'm looking for. Okay, it's not bad. I do need to do a little bit of cleanup. I've got some clay over the edge. So I'm just taking my thumbnail and I'm scraping it against the wood, cutting off the excess pieces, much like you do when you bake a pie. Then I can go around and fill in any holes or dents along that edge using the pieces that I cut off. Once I'm happy with the overall shape, I'm using some water and my fingers to smooth out the texture on the top. I'm burnishing it with my nails and making sure that everything is as smooth as I can get it. I'm trying not to add too much water though, as that will make the clay really sticky and it will take much longer to dry. It's still going to be a little bit lumpy and bumpy, but I'm pretty happy with that. Now I have my dome. I've spent all that time trying to get it nice and smooth, and now I'm going to have to carve some lines in it. If you look at the pot is stripy, so I need the lid to match that. I'm not going to follow the lines exactly. I'm just going to use this pry tool to carve some stripes in so that it gives the impression that this belongs to that pot. Go all the way round. The clay is still really soft because I've added all of that water, so there we go. I just need to try and smooth out those lumps, which I did not mean to put in there. And then I need to leave this all to dry. I'm going to work on the lily pad while I'm waiting for that cactus pot to dry. I've got some clay here. This is oil-based clay. It will not air dry and you cannot bake it. It will always remain pliable. This one is sulphur free, so it is safe to use with moulds. I'm just going to give this a quick knead to make it nice and soft. And my plan is to use this in the mould to create an inlay. Alright, this is soft enough now. I'm going to push this down into the very edge of the plate, underneath that rim. I don't want it to deform the side of the plate, so I'm going to have to squash it flat a little bit. And at the same time, I want to try and make a wedge. So this is supposed to be where the stalk joins the lily pad, and you have this kind of V cut out of it. The better the shape that I can get on this, the less work I'm going to have to do sanding it afterwards. Now, because this is an oil-based clay, it makes a perfect inlay because oil and water don't mix, so the Aqua Cast is not going to stick to it. That's not looking too bad. I'm just going to try and smooth this around a little bit into a nice curve. I'm not worried about it being too perfect. After all, this is meant to be a plant and they are not perfect. All right, I'm almost there. Make sure that that is going to be higher than the edge, otherwise the Aqua Cast is going to flow over the top of it. So I just need to squish that back up. There we go, and then make the V. Right, not bad. I'm going to use my fingernail to put some texture in there. Okay, now I just need to mix up the Aqua Cast. And because I'm only going to be doing the dish, I need to know the volume, which is 200 ml. So I can find out how much powder I'm going to need. I'm going to go ahead and mix it up and pour it. You've already seen me do that, so I'll be back for demould. Alright, I can demould these now. This is still slightly warm, so I'm going to leave that for a second. But this is a flower that I need for the top of the cactus pot, and while I had some Aqua Cast mixed, I made this. And that looks really good. That's come out nicely. I'm happy with that. Right, that needs to dry for a little bit. Right, as I say, this is still warm, but I can demould this. And that's definitely worked as a barrier. I can see some bubbles around the edge, but they're micro bubbles. That happens with Aqua Cast, despite everything I try to do to stop it. Right, just get the last little bit out, and the clay's done no damage to the mould whatsoever. So I just need to fold that the right way round. And then I can remove the clay. And because it's oil-based, it won't stick. There you go, it came out really easy. There's a little bit stuck right up in that point. Well, it's not stuck, I just need to weed it out. So I'll just take the pry tool and hook it out. It's a really sharp point. You can see just how intricate the texture is. It picks up everything. So I'll just get rid of that little bit there. And that is not too bad. That's kind of the shape that I wanted. It's a little bit rough and ready, but I can use this file just to smooth out any of these rough areas. Best to do it now while it's nice and soft. I need to leave this to dry before I can paint it, so I'll come back to that a little bit later. In the meantime, I'm going to finish the cactus pot. It's the next day, everything is nice and dry, and it's ready for painting. I'm going to use some acrylic gesso primer so that I start with the same base coat on all of the pieces. I'm working with foam clay, wood and Aqua Cast, and they'll all accept the paint differently. Hopefully if I use this primer, everything has the same starting point. So I'm just going to put a thin coat on all of these. Plus, the thick paint will help to fill up some of the small holes along the bottom edge of the pot as well. Once the gesso had dried, it was time to add some colour. I'm using an acrylic paint, and you can see it is awful. I have to say, I really don't like these paints. I cannot recommend them. At first I thought it was the brush, so I switched to a different brush and it made very little difference. It's streaky and the colour, this is supposed to be pale green, was just too dark. So I had to come up with a plan B. I carried on and painted everything as I couldn't remove the paint that I'd already put down. So I mixed up my own green paint using some chalk paint and the acrylic paint. I used a blue and peach chalk paint and added it to the pale green acrylic paint. And this gave me a nicer colour, and with the addition of the chalk paint, it covers really well. I applied it with a baby wipe. This is a damp baby wipe, and it was so quick and easy just to wipe this on. At first, I thought I might just have a textured surface, but actually the coverage was so good that within a couple of coats, I had a nice solid colour. And more importantly, it was the same shade on both the base and the lid. So I gave each piece 2 coats and I left it to dry completely. The paint is dry and you can see that it's really matte. So I'm going to give it several coats of acrylic varnish to make it shiny and protect the paint. I'm using a really soft brush to make sure that I get the varnish into all of the textures. And I'm going to give it several coats so that I can build up the shine. The more coats that you give it, the more it's going to look like ceramic. While I'm waiting for the varnish to dry on the pot, I'm going to colour this flower, and I'm going to use this NicPro acrylic marker. It's colour red. I love these markers. I really recommend them. The paint is fantastic. It covers the Aqua Cast really well. It's got a brush tip. Yeah, there's no complaints about these. So I'm just going to colour the whole of this and let it dry. Because it's acrylic paint, it won't take that long. You can see this paint is so good, it just needs 1 coat. I'm also going to give it a couple of coats of the same varnish that I used on the pot, and I'm going to set this aside to dry. This is all nice and shiny now, but the inside and the other side of the lid are very untidy, so I need to clean them up and seal them. I'm going to mix up a paint using some acrylic varnish and gold mica powder. It's going to solve 2 problems at once. It will seal it and hopefully it will disguise the mess on the inside. So I'm just going to put some acrylic varnish into a cup and then I can mix the powder in to create my paint. So I'll test this out first. It might still be a little too transparent, but I can always add some more afterwards. Just grab my brush, put the lid on that, and now I can try this out. Okay, that is very transparent. I can still see the paint through it, so I am going to add a little bit more mica powder. Mix that through. Okay, and then I can try that. That's a little better. I think with a couple of coats, that's probably going to work. So I will seal the inside of the pot and I'll do the underside of the lid as well. And this is going to be gorgeous once it's dry. It'll be a little surprise when you open the lid. As you can see, the inside of the pot looks so much better, as does the underside of the lid. I really love the glow that you get from that. Now I just need to add the flower on top of the lid. It's going to act as a handle. So I want to make sure that it's going to be fixed down securely. I'm going to use some super glue to do that. I'm going to put a blob underneath. And then I can just hold this in place until that glue sets. All right, that's all fixed. And if I put the lid on, that looks really nice. Now cactuses have spines. I don't want to put anything spiky on here, so I'm going to use these gems instead. I've put a little bit of super glue on a plastic lid, and now I'm just going to dip the gems in and apply them to the pot. The gems that I'm using are flat backed and they're citrine coloured. So I've got different sizes. I'm going to try to scatter them around the pot and lid. This will be the last thing that I need to do to finish this. So I'll come back and show you what that looks like at the end of the video. The lily pad dish is ready for a coat of paint. I'm using the rest of the chalk paint that I had for the cactus pot. I'm just applying it with the baby wipe as it's really quick. I'm going to do the top and the sides as well, and then I'll set this aside to dry. I want a lily flower to go in the middle of the dish, and I didn't have a mould, so I've cut these out of card using my Cricut. Now I just need to put some score lines along the middle of the petals. So I'm just going to line up my ruler, and I'm going to take it about 2/3 of the way down the petal. I don't want to go into the middle. I'm using a dotting tool to emboss the lines in, and I'm working on my silicone mat, which is pretty soft. Once I've gone all the way round and done each petal, just got to do the last one. I'll do the same for the others in a minute. I'm going to press my thumb into the line and fold the petals around. So just push with my thumbnail and then fold up the petals. I'm going to do the same for the others. Now I'm going to apply a little bit of bookbinding glue in the middle. I'll offset the petals and I'm going to stack these. Just do the last one. Whoops. And then offset that. I'm going to push that down in the middle with my dotting tool until that glue is set. That's all glued together now. I'm going to use some craft UV resin to seal this. I'm going to put a blob on the table so that I can apply it with a brush. And I'm going to paint each individual petal. As I brush the resin on, it will darken the paper, but it actually just makes the colours look richer. At first, I painted multiple petals at one time, but I quickly realised it would be better just to do them individually. I used a torch to set them in place. This is only partially curing them. So once I'd finished doing the flower, I popped it underneath my dual-sided lamp for 10 minutes. I'm going to do the front and the back of all the petals, shaping them as I go along. Okay, the flower is set. It's no longer flimsy paper, it is solid and shiny. I need to put a crystal in the middle, so I've put a little bit of super glue in and I'm going to drop that in, and of course it's gone in upside down. So I'm just going to flip that over and hold that in place until the glue sets. And now I've got a really pretty centre to my flower. I'm going to continue painting this. That chalk paint is now all dry. And now I want to varnish it, but I want to colour my varnish. I've got some resin dye in emerald and some chrome powder in green. So as I did before, I'm going to put a little bit of varnish into a cup and then I'll add my colours. The difference this time is that I am adding a resin dye, but this is transparent, so that's not going to cover up the paint underneath. It's just going to add a little bit of colour. So I'm going to add the chrome powder too. I love this green chrome powder. Green is one of my favourite colours. I know not everybody likes it. All right, I'm going to take a really soft brush and apply this varnish. And I'm hoping that that chalk paint has acted as a primer. That looks pretty nice. I like the colour. So just get that spread out and paint this. Yeah, that I think is going to work. It isn't covering as much as I like, so I might need to put a little bit more mica powder in, but we'll see. Oh no. As I'm brushing over the top, it seems to be pulling the varnish off and pulling the paint off underneath it. That is not covering. Right, let me wipe that off and start again. Can that cover again? That's not too bad. It's actually pulling the chalk paint off underneath, so I'm going to wipe this off with a baby wipe and start again. Well, this looks like a right mess, so I'm going to put varnish directly on top of it, and then I'm going to add the mica powder on that. And I might need to do a couple of coats before I get this to look the way I want. So I'm going to go with a solid colour of mica powder, I think. I really love this green. So I'll just get that all spread out. Okay, and then I'm going to tip that down and spread this out. That is sticking a little bit better. As I say, I may have to let this dry and then go back over the top of it. Hopefully that will stick. I'm just going to persist with this until I get the green colour that I'm looking for. Okay, I finally managed to get the green that I wanted, and this was 2 coats of paint. I ended up mixing the mica in with the varnish and then applying a second coat. And I think that looks great. I've done the back as well. I'm going to put some cork on the bottom, so I've left that plain. Now I need to put my flower in place, and I'm going to glue that in the middle using some super glue. So I'm just going to put a blob in the middle of the plate, and then I can hold the flower in place. And this is going to be a kind of trinket tray. You should still have enough space all the way around the outside to pop rings or anything you want, earrings, that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to hold this until it sets. So I'm going to move on to my next project, which mostly involves painting, and I'll come back to show you what this looks like at the end. So for this last project, I'm going to be making a kiwi fruit, and that doesn't require any modifications, just painting. So I'm going to leave you with some music, and you can watch me turn this mushroom cap into a kiwi fruit slice. And here they are, 3 more projects made using that mushroom mould. This is a cactus pot. I made the lid using wood and foam clay, and you get a surprise with that gold inside. I think this is really lovely, especially the gems for the spikes around the outside. Yeah, I think that one's my favourite actually. And then the kiwi fruit. I added a little bit of that chrome powder that I used on here, the green chrome, into the varnish. I think that just gives that a little bit more shine, and yeah, I like that a lot. That's going to go in my kitchen, I think. And finally we have the lily pad with that paper lily flower. I really love this green, and I love the texture that is on this mould. It has made it so versatile and so much fun to play with. I recommend it, and if you're interested in getting hold of it, check out the description box below, because I'll leave links to the supplies that I've used where I can find them. Well, I really hope that you like the things that I've made and that you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give me a thumbs up, hype and share the video, comment if you can, and please consider subscribing if you haven't. It is free to you, really helps my channel, and you'll be able to come back and see what I'm going to make next time. I'm going to leave you with some close-up photos. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye.